and let us all do we can to build a better future. All right, folks, we're going to be talking about the Twitter files. That's right. I was talking about this with, again, the outstanding Fair and Balance. If you haven't been following her on social media, please do so. She's been a treasure trove of information in regards towards all the scum and corruption that's happening in Washington, D.C. And yesterday, Representative Ro Khanna gave his first interview since the Twitter files were released. And hang on, in his defense, and this is all I really want to say, he meekly, I don't say heroically, meekly brought up the fact of, hey, wouldn't this impact the First Amendment, free speech? So I want to pull up this video. Shout out to Case Study QB, who's wrongly being censored on Twitter. Elon, please fix that. Daniel, if we can, let's play this first video. Obviously, Jerry, if there's some points you want to pause at it, let us know. But let's play it for the people and find out what good old Ro Khanna has to say. It won't be much, folks, I promise.
Twitter files, new emails and documents reveal just how intense the debate inside Twitter in 2020 was, as the company went to great lengths to suppress a New York Post story about Hunter Biden and his laptop. That laptop contained a trove of personal and business emails that critics claimed were proof of corrupt activity by both Joe and Hunter Biden, in which Trump supporters say would have impacted the election if not censored. Well, the communications were obtained by writer Matt Taibbi. They show the internal debates over removing links to the story, labeling the story unsafe, and locking out accounts that tried to share the story. In one exchange, a top Twitter official says in part, quote, "I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this as unsafe." And the files show this.
Let's pause it here for a second. Let's pause it here for a second if we can. So I want to address to everyone that what Matt Taibbi did by releasing that long thread on Twitter, it's something we need to see more of. And he's been constantly attacked by all the corporate sellouts on social media. And if we can we mute that background noise there from anyone real quick? But it's been eye-opening in regards towards just how much he's been attacked and how much all of corporate media and the previous people who were running Twitter are upset that now their big secret is out. That obviously it's something that we all knew, is that Twitter was dissenting voices. So there you go. Let's go ahead and play the rest of the video if we can.
Khanna emailing Twitter's top lawyer at the time, in part, and I quote, Ro Khanna, "This seems a violation of the First Amendment principles. I say this as a total Biden partisan and convinced he didn't do anything wrong. But in the heat of a presidential campaign, restricting dissemination of newspaper articles, even if the New York Post is far right, seems like it will invite more backlash than it will do good." And Congressman Khanna is out front now. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. Your first television interview since I saw this. And you know, I saw this. And really, I read it many, many times because you really stood up for what you believe is true. So let me start here, Congressman. That was mediocre. What you said then. You had only limited information at the time, right? You just knew that it was being suppressed and you wanted to make a statement. Has anything that you have learned so far from the Twitter investigation in the past hours and days surprised you?
Erin, what surprised me is that Twitter made the decision in the first place to censor. Look, liberal Democrats should be for the principle of standing up for First Amendment speech. And New York Times Sullivan said, we want speech to be open, uninhibited, wide-ranging. I get Twitter is a private actor, but they're effectively a modern public square.
Pause for a second. Go ahead, Jerry.
Is he saying the Democrats lied?
So what he's saying is a word salad in regards to covering up the fact that the Democrats were lying. So
lying about being all about free speech and open conversation when they're clearly
no. Yeah. And like I said, he's giving that word salad though, Jerry. And that's the depressing part. When we think about all the things the Democrats promised before 2020, how they were going to protect free speech and how they were going to be strong and stand up against Trump and anyone that would silence them. What this was for a lot of corporate Democrats and fake activists and blue checkmark people was a way for them to put on this mask saying that they cared about free speech when in all reality, especially after 2020, we saw this massive wave of absolute unchecked censorship and people being shadow banned, people being removed off of Twitter. And it wasn't just only Twitter where this was happening. This was also happening on YouTube and Facebook.
Not just censorship, but manipulation of the news. I mean, it's one thing to like shut things down, but then to manipulate and feed Twitter what they should and shouldn't say, that takes it to another level as well. That's like that's state-run propaganda. What we want you to cover, what we don't want you to cover. If you got to shut these people down because they're saying that, that's fine. But this is also the story, the narrative we want you to push.
So remember this, folks, especially when we look at how Twitter was quick to silence everyone. Don't forget that the FBI went to the people who were running Twitter. That's right, before Elon Musk took over and threw everybody out, including the kitchen sink. Not only did the FBI confront the people who were running Twitter before Elon, they also went to the good old Zuckerberg himself. And these were the ones, the FBI were the ones who issued the order of, hey, that Hunter Biden laptop story, that's fake news. You want to censor it. And what did Twitter and Facebook do? They did everything they could to make sure that article from the New York Post would not be shared by anyone using those two platforms. And for a long time, corporate media itself was saying that that story was fake news, and anyone covering it was Russiagate, was somebody who was pro-Russian, someone who was a right-wing, someone who was an extremist, a conspiracy theorist. But surprise, surprise, turns out the Hunter Biden laptop story is all too real. And how are we saying these same how are we seeing these same critics now? Well, they're saying that story, well, there's nothing too impressive about it, even though there was probably some, most likely 100%, a lot of illicit, illegal activities that Hunter was doing. And no, I'm not talking about drug use, but I'm talking about with other individuals that may not be of his age. Also for the fact that, again, there was a lot of insider corruption and so much more on that laptop. So, folks, but the story was real.
And there's another layer to this also, Kit. For decades now, tech giants like Twitter and Facebook have hidden behind this claim that they are not publishers, which limits their liability to lawsuits regarding libel, slander. But so long as they chose to editorialize what could and could not reside on their platforms, especially in relation to actual news stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story, this does make them a publisher, which means that they should be open for lawsuits since they are choosing what can and can't go on their platforms, just like any other news organization. So while they enjoy all of this protection, claiming that, well, we're not publishers, we have no control, we have limited control, we have to censor this person or this story and that story, because we're worried about it being slanderous or libelous, when they actually suppress news stories, not just decide to target individuals that they suspect of slander and libel, and they are controlling the news cycle, that makes them publishers, which puts them on an equal level with every other news organization, which means that they should be as responsible and accountable, but they don't want to be because of the millions and millions of dollars that they'd be bleeding anytime anybody brought a lawsuit against them.
Agreed. Let's pull up the rest of the video. There's a few more things I want to hear Ro Khanna speak about, and then we'll play the second video from Fox News of all places. So let's get that video set up.
Okay.
And it was disappointing to me that they were suppressing the New York Post.
And based on the communications that we have that were released, you are the only Democratic lawmaker who said that. You spoke up. You told Twitter to reconsider it. You said you didn't think it was right. You stood up for the First Amendment. Your email was thoughtful and definitive. Are you disappointed that you're the only one?
Well, look, we've all written emails, and I'm glad that they released that one. I'm sure I've written things that aren't as thoughtful, but when I read it, I said, I stand by every word. I mean, I got into politics partly because I believe American democracy is great when we have everyone have a voice to stand up and participate in speech. And I do hope more Democrats will stand up for the broader principle, which is we want to have forums that don't have censorship, that allow for all perspectives.
So Twitter's deputy counsel, Jim Baker, also defended Twitter's actions to suppress documents at the time. Again, this is according to the documents that we have. And what he said in part is this: there are some facts that indicate the materials may have been hacked, while there are others indicating that the computer was either abandoned or the owner consented to allow the repair shop to access it for at least some purposes. We simply need more information. Now, Of course, Congressman,
For a second.
Yeah, let's pause it
the
here. Go
laptop
ahead.
was real now.
He was high off his mind and forgot to pick it up from the shop is what it was.
Probably so.
Stoned out of his mind is what he was. And being the fuck up that he is, he forgot that he left something at the computer shop, or he was just completely delusional about the fact that leaving that with a repair shop with all of the stuff on it couldn't open him up to incredible observation or with what the shop found on it.
Well,
liability was the word I was looking for.
Well, Ro Khanna is a robot. He's a non-functioning robot. He's like a broken clock. Maybe occasionally he'll say something right or input a program right. But you have to remember, what he's doing right now is the rotating role of the hero. Like how you have the rotating role of the Democrats being, well, you have some of the conservative blue dog Democrats voting against popular progressive issues. Ro Khanna, for right now, it is his turn of being correct on an issue. He probably got the A-OK from leadership to be one of the few dissenting voices. Because what have we seen throughout most of our time covering politics in Washington, D.C.? None of these politicians are authentic, okay? Because when you ask people like Ro Khanna about protection of whistleblowers or activists and journalists, they'll occasionally give their weak answers, their typical, but they're always silent and complicit, especially for this one guy named Jules, who's somewhere in the European hemisphere, and another guy who's snowed in somewhere on the Asian continent. Well, let's face it, folks, and we have to be careful because, again, the YouTube censorship is all too real. It will come after you if you say certain words. Ro Khanna has been silent and complicit on it. Just because corporate media is right now talking about pardoning a good friend of ours named Jules, he's not being authentic here. He's just saying something that sounds correct, but will he do anything further to protect dissenting voices or free speech or independent media, or even challenge the algorithms that Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter have that favor corporate media? No, he won't. Why? Because the same people control corporate media also control our politicians. So nothing's going to fundamentally change. It's just one big club. And, well, it's finally been revealed that we are not in it, especially when it comes down to Twitter. Look at our newsfeed and how everything is presented to you. Sometimes you probably get posts from mainstream media and you're wondering how it got there. It's because Twitter favors the establishment, especially corporate media. It's a fact that we all know all too well, especially if you're looking at Hard Lens Media or any other independent media network on YouTube. What's the next video to follow? Something from mainstream media. It's a fact. I want to pull down this video and pull up the next video. I want to show up the coverage of Fox News and their take on the Twitter files. Don't worry, folks. They're not going to be using their brain cells that much. They might say some things you agree with, but again, this is Fox News. Super shout out again to Case Study QB, who's wrongly being censored on Twitter. But go ahead.
Prepare us. Which blowhole on Fox News are we going to have to be subjected to?
It's our good friend Jesse.
Okay.
Jesse, not the British guy. So let's go ahead and pull up that video.
Blew the lid off the biggest cover-up in American history, the one that put a compromised president in the White House. Late Friday night, as reported here, Elon released emails showing the Biden campaign had a direct line to Twitter. They were ordering the social media company to censor the truth about the Democrat nominee. And the big October surprise that would have ended his campaign, Hunter's laptop.
Twitter is doing one team's bidding before an election, shutting down dissenting voices on a pivotal election. That is the very definition of election interference. Twitter was acting like an arm of the Democratic National Committee. It was absurd.
And if you're wondering how big media is handling this bombshell, well, doesn't sound like they learned a thing.
Twitter really struggled with how to handle this explosive story that was published in the New York Post. Also because they couldn't verify a lot of it at the time, which was a major issue. Exactly.
They're so used to rigging primaries, it just comes, easily to them to rig what goes on Twitter, the Democratic National Committee, and how they work. I mean, Musk is absolutely right. As I've stated multiple times, I'm no fan of Donald Trump, right?
No,
but
none of us are. No one's a fan.
What the Democrats did was they rigged the conversation. Had the Hunter Biden laptop story been allowed to be reported and investigated, It's very, very clear we may have had different results for the election. Whether that's a good thing or not, obviously we can debate that. I mean, we basically had lesser of two evils to choose that election, even though I didn't vote for either. But it's clear that this is election rigging, and they are so used to rigging the process that it's like, well, let's rig. We'll make sure that this story doesn't get out because we're entitled to what we want to do to control the narrative, even though this news is very, very relevant to how Americans would look at Joe Biden and question his judgment in regards to what his son is running around doing and how it's related to Biden's activities.
Well, I think as we wrap up the story, let's all look at how we were let down by corporate media purposely. Because again, this was all done on purpose. It wasn't that people are acting stupid. I am laughing at the fact that Fox News is having a field day on this, because let's face it, if corporate media, blue check mark people, the Democratic establishment really wanted to do their due diligence, they would not have picked somebody as flawed and has such a huge shadow over him, Joe Biden. Okay. Joe Biden has been on the wrong side of history for many of these popular progressive issues. He's been on the wrong side of the civil rights issue, women's reproductive rights, standing up against corporations. I mean, this is the same Joe Biden. Look, just to repeat it again, he was against busing and desegregation. He didn't want to have his white kids with any black kids going to the same school. All right. He gave a eulogy to Strom Thurmond. 2005, he made the credit card corporations, helped credit card corporations make student debt what it is. He was against women's reproductive rights, okay? This is the same Joe Biden who voted for the war in Iraq in 2001. The same Joe Biden who helped write the crime bill. Even Bill Clinton apologized for writing that bill. And that's not saying much because he's a politician too, but Joe Biden is not sorry. And yet there are numerous examples now all across social media, as much as TYT or Majority Report want to hide it. Let's face it, Joe Biden clearly has some cognitive issues, okay? So never forget all the jagoff people from Bernie Sanders, the TYT, Majority Report, everyone else saying, we got to vote for Biden because Trump. Oh, don't pay any attention to the Hunter Biden laptop story. Trust the people on Twitter. Trust the people on Facebook. Trust mainstream media. How's that working out for you? Because it's all real. It's all in front of us. And hey, this might upset the vote blue no matter who crowd. But now, if Trump really wants to give the 1-2 punch in the Republican primary and possibly if he makes it to the general election, his team has a treasure trove of political ammunition that he could use against the Democrats, corporate media, and anyone else that stood against him. And no, this is not me favoring Trump at all. This is me speaking the truth. That's right there in front of him. It's for him to use. It's like that scene from House of the Dragon. I started watching that show when the king is confronting his second son about how come you're saying your cousins are bastards. And the eldest son says, Dad, everyone knows they don't look like their father. No, duh. Everyone knows, corporate media. Everyone knows, blue check marks, that Twitter and Facebook have been silencing, suppressing dissenting voices. Everyone knows that corporate media is in bed with a two-party system. Everyone knows that corporations and the 1% controls politicians and corporate media, okay? So there it is. It's a fact. You can't hide it anymore, and people like AOC and Bernie Sanders will continue to play their little lying game and sheepdogging people into the DNC. You got to wake up to the fact. You've been lied to. You've been lied to. You've been lied to. And why is that? Because the establishment, the politicians, don't respect you.